What's up guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So my name is Brittany Lesser. I mostly do health and fitness videos, but I'm also a mom. I love fashion, beauty, overall wellness, and especially mental health. So on that note, today's video, I want to talk about my experience with EMDR. So I said I was going to make this video a really long time ago, and just a lot has happened in my life. I actually did film this video and then I lost the footage. And I was also crying, I was a mess. I was like right after or in the midst of the EMDR, and I just feel like it's better for me to come at it with a clear mind and a clear conscience, and it's been a long time since I finished the EMDR. So I'll tell you guys like what it is and kind of like what to expect, because when my therapist mentioned EMDR, I had no idea what to expect. Like, she slightly explained it to me, but I still didn't really understand. I was still kind of like, what the heck? Like, I didn't know going into it, like what really was going to happen in the therapy session. So, if you guys don't know, I have been through basically, like, I went through a lot this year, starting the end of last year. I think it like all started in November. I've been through a lot in my life. So if you guys don't know, I started going to therapy probably the end of last year because I started going through a really rough time in my life. And I just knew that like my anxiety was so bad to where I couldn't even function. I've had anxiety my whole life, but it was just like kind of just got really bad, and it was consuming my life. Like, I couldn't concentrate, I couldn't think of anything. I was just crying. Like, I was just like really sad and depressed and just constantly worried all the time. So I started going to therapy. I found an amazing therapist. Like, she's absolutely wonderful, and I've been going ever since then. And she mentioned something about EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing. I know it's a mouthful, and I'm pretty sure, I hope I didn't butcher that, but that's basically what it is. And it's actually used for patients or people with PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. Again, I'm not a therapist. Oh, let me do a disclaimer. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a mental health professional. This is just my experience and me explaining kind of how my EMDR sessions went. So, yeah, it was just kind of like, I think she mentioned EMDR. She's obviously a specialist with EMDR, and she also mentioned something about how, it's funny because she would say stuff like I'd be like, I know this is the case, but like, it's still just like, I basically just like can't get over it. Like, I was having like dreams constantly, and like I would get triggered with so many different things to the point where like I was just bawling. Like I felt like, I don't even know how to explain it. It was just, I basically, like, I wasn't diagnosed with PTSD. I was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder and panic disorder. I was having a lot of panic attacks. My panic attacks are very situational. So it's like, it happened when something happened that was traumatic. And like, I've had anxiety attacks that just kind of came out of nowhere, but my panic attacks are like full body, like I literally think I'm gonna have a heart attack and die type of thing. So anyway, she mentioned EMDR, and I was like, I'm all for it. She said that she's had so much success with a lot of her patients. And so, yeah, so basically we did an assessment before my first EMDR session. And she basically said all of my sessions were going to be 90 minutes. Every case is different. Sometimes she does it like all in one sitting for like 4 hours straight or whatever. But in my case, she thought I would do okay with just multiple sessions. And you know, how long it takes usually like really depends. I think mine only took a couple of months. Like, I actually, like, she was surprised at how fast like I was really getting the hang of it and how fast I was really recovering from the trauma. So I think I completely finished like mid-July. And I think maybe I started, it was really only a couple months. But it was like maybe like 5 sessions or 6 sessions, but I've heard of people's lasting a lot longer. So again, like, everyone's completely different. Their situations are different. But basically, we kind of like, you know, we talked about in the assessment, like, what was my main trauma, basically. Like, we talked about a lot of different traumas in my life, and she basically wanted to find something that correlated to the current thing that I was going through. So we did find something. There was a lot of things, a lot of different traumas that happened in my life, and trauma doesn't always have to be something like, you know, war, or like a lot of people think PTSD, like, you know, army, like obviously it's very common and stuff like that, but trauma is really just like anything that's unexpected that, you really don't know how to handle yourself, right? Yeah, but trauma can be various different things. It can be a breakup. It can be, you know, someone dying. It can be, like, for example, like one of the things that happened in my life was, I had like a very traumatic friendship growing up, and it was just kind of like a toxic relationship, really. I won't get into the details and stuff, but it was really traumatic for me. Or like my parents getting divorced was traumatic. You know, them fighting constantly. Another event that I don't want to talk about, you know, that happened in my life, like when I was a kid with my parents, things like that. Anything can really be traumatic, and it really just like you can't, like, sometimes people are like, oh well, you've never really been through real trauma, because like I've had that said to me, like, you've never been through true trauma because it's just like these little things. Like, no, trauma can be serious for, you know, a lot of people, even though it doesn't sound as serious as, like, you know, other things like going to war or things like that. But trauma can be so many different things. So we had the assessment, and we talked about basically all the traumas in my life. And we kind of found like a correlation between something that happened, like I said, when I think I was like in 5th grade. All of you that are out of the country, I know you guys say this differently, but in America, like the end of elementary school is 5th grade, and then middle school, like, but it went all throughout high school, like my friend. So yeah, so it was just a very similar situation to what I was going through. A lot of the things that happened, my body kind of registered that I wasn't lovable, or I wasn't like enough, I wasn't worthy, I wasn't, so many different things that, like, it's funny because I would say, like, I know I am in my mind. Like, I know how much like I bring to the table. I know how great of a friend I am, how great of a girlfriend I am. I know how great of a person I am, how great of a mom I am. Like, I know all of these amazing qualities of myself, but like the trauma basically caused me to, in my body, like my mind understood it, but my body, it felt like I would get triggered to the point where I was like, I'm basically worthless type of thing. I'm not gonna explain, like, you know, everything, like all my traumas in this video, like that's not what it's about. But basically, that was what we focused on. So the first time I went into the EMDR, I was like so nervous. I was just like, what is happening? Like, what am I, you know, what is this basically? So what happened was I sat down, and she gave me these 2 stones, and they were vibrating back and forth, like really, really fast. She, you know, was like, okay, is this pressure good, whatever. So she put it up to where I was like, yeah, like whatever. So when I closed my eyes, yeah, whatever. When I close my eyes, your eyes automatically go like this, back and forth. So it's kind of like, that's what the eye movement desensitization reprocessing is. And actually she had mentioned too that some dreams and nightmares are a form of EMDR, which is really cool. So it helps you heal, basically. So some dreams, like if you know, for example, if you go through a breakup and you just constantly dream about the person, that's actually your body's way of doing some form of EMDR and helping you heal. So I was holding the stones, they were constantly vibrating back and forth, and she basically was like, okay, this is what we're gonna talk about. So she basically started off by saying, okay, I want you to think of, you know, this, like, let's just say the thing that hurts the most, right? So, it's hard for me to explain it without, basically like the thing that hurts you the most, the thing that like causes you the most pain. Like, for example, if you go through a breakup, right, thinking of that person that you love with someone else, or in love with someone else, or, you know, sexually with someone else, or whatever it is, like that hurts, right? That hurts because you love that person, whatever, and you're not over it yet. So I'll use that as an example, because that's just probably the easiest for everyone to realize or connect with. So let's just say she said, okay, I want you to think of that. Like, EMDR is very, like, it brings up all your traumas and you basically relive it in a sense, which is really, really hard. So it was just automatically, like, all of the sessions were so mentally and emotionally exhausting and draining. So definitely expect that going into it. And so basically she said, okay, I want you to think of that and then basically repeat, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, I'm not, you know, for example. So if that was like my main problem, whatever. So like, that's basically what she said. So she would say, okay, here's the problem. I want you to think of like the most painful thing that causes all of these like icky feelings in your body, in your like wherever you feel it. It's mostly like anxieties here in your gut, like all just throughout your body. Just like really bad feelings that cause a lot of pain and a lot of heartache and a lot of just like trauma in your body, basically. And so she says, I want you to think of that and repeat this to yourself, like repeat the traumatic thing that you're trying to get over, which is really hard because it's like saying, like, I'm a piece of shit, right? So then she said, automatically your brain is gonna kind of like, she basically makes me close my eyes, and she does the buzzing back and forth. And once I'm thinking of that and repeating that in my head, my brain automatically jumps to traumatic events. Automatically. It was nuts. It was actually crazy how quickly, like, it just jumped to so many different traumatic events. And so then, like, after she's like, okay, like, and I'm just immediately bawling because I'm reliving this trauma. I'm reliving all of the things that, like, that was hurtful, right? And by the way, those examples are not exactly why I did EMDR or what exactly it was for. Like I said, I've had many traumas in my life, but that was probably just like the easiest thing that I could think of, that a lot of people could relate to, because you guys aren't gonna have the same traumas as me, but breakups and things like that are something that a lot of people have been through. So, or if it's like, a family member dying or something, like you think like, let's just say like someone died and like you felt like you could have saved them in some sense or whatever it is, like you think it's your fault, like that's in your body, and EMDR would be a great way to help you heal from that, basically. And so you basically like repeat that, the main trauma in your head, and you're literally, my brain immediately jumps to different things. So then she stops and said, okay, well, what did you see? What did you think? Like all of these things. And I would tell her, and then she would say, okay, focus on this, like another thing that I brought up, right? So then I would focus on that. My mind would immediately jump to different things. And it basically repeated for 90 minutes, like for the whole session. And like she said, sometimes like your brain would stop and you would get stuck and like, whatever, but mine just kept going. It just kept jumping. And, that was basically the whole session. And so we did that multiple times. So throughout each session, we kind of like found some sort of like connection between like one trauma to another trauma, or we found, we just found a lot of things that like we didn't even think about. Like, why is this such a trauma to me now? It's like, well, I went through this in my childhood, or, I went through this like thing that, is very similar, into why it's like, it can be as deep as like when you're a little person, right? So it's just super crazy, which is why I'm so like obsessed with mental health now, because I'm like, I want to give Grayson the least amount of trauma possible. And that's not to say I had a bad childhood. Like I had an amazing childhood, I had an amazing family, but like obviously everyone goes through things that, even if it's not on purpose, right? So yeah, we found a lot of connections, and basically after each session she would say, okay, like, how much pain and anxiety do you have over that now? And it would, every single time would be less and less and less. And I would find things, like, well, I know this happened, and I know that, I am lovable and I am worthy, or I am, it's not my fault, or whatever the trauma is. Like your body tends to register that, what your mind already knows, basically. So that was pretty much my experience. And then, like I said, every single session we came back in and she said, okay, we left off here, so I want you to think of this. So I would close my eyes, the little vibration, and my mind would just immediately jump. And it would just, we did that literally for every single session. We came to so many, like, I had so many breakthroughs in every single session, like, when, like, and so basically every type of trigger became less and less triggering. So whereas before, if something happened that like made me think of like the trauma, I would just immediately lose it. Like I would react emotionally. I was just like, I didn't know how to process it. I didn't know how to handle it. And I just broke down, basically, is the best way for me to explain it. But then as I was going through the EMDR, like I would see something, let's just say I saw something that I saw months ago that would make me literally just immediately start bawling. Like I felt okay. Like even though it still hurt and it's not going to completely go away, for example, if a family member dies and that's traumatic for you and you think of something that reminds you of them, like you're not automatically just gonna be like in it and in the midst of the pain. Like it's still gonna hurt and you're still gonna be like, wow, you know, but you're gonna know like it's not my fault, or you know, they like it was their time, or whatever it is. Your body just learns to know what your mind, or like register what your mind already knows, if that makes sense. So yeah, so I did that for however many sessions, and like I said, she was really shocked at how much my mind was just jumping to different things, and it was constantly just like all over the place. Like it would go from here to there to here to there to like now to like childhood to now to years ago to like, you know, all these different things, and like just like different things that I have been carrying like my whole life, which was absolutely nuts. And it kind of like teaches you different patterns that you're repeating, or you know, like why it's so painful for you, whereas like other things might not be as painful. I don't even know if that makes sense, but so yeah, so basically that was what the EMDR was. She guided me the entire time. It was maybe like 90 seconds of the vibration, and my mind was automatically just like, I don't know if it's like 30 to 90 seconds. I don't remember. Like when you're in it, you're just like bawling and thinking of all the trauma that you've gone through. And so you don't even really know how long you're like, your eyes are closed and your eyes are going like this, and you're just thinking of crazy shit like all over the place. So yeah, and it, like I would think of like events, I would think of people, I would think of literally like so many different things that like I almost like a lot of things I like forgot about. A lot of things like I haven't thought of in like years and years and years and years, which was nuts. And basically like you don't really know where your mind is gonna go or what it's gonna do. So it was absolutely crazy. Like thinking back to it is crazy, but honestly, it was the best thing I ever did. Like it really, really helped me a lot. It's just so different now. Like I still get triggered, and I still, you know, some things like definitely still hurt. Like I don't think that's ever gonna go away, but I think it's like my reaction and like what I know to be true, and like how it makes me feel about myself as a person basically, is kind of like what the difference is. And kind of like how like the trauma, for example, like it's not my fault, right? So it's not like I'm not the problem. Like whereas before, like I immediately just thought like I was hopeless and like I was the problem, you know, like whatever it is, like whatever you go through in childhood, like if your parents get divorced, like you think it's your fault, you know, even though it's not. So like things like some sort of traumas like just don't make sense. Like even though you know it, like I know it wasn't my fault that my parents got divorced, but like in your body you still kind of feel that. So that's what the EMDR helps with. But yeah, she guided me the entire time. Like we would have a moment where my eyes were closed and my brain was going through, and I was just like hysterical, like for 90 minutes straight, every single session. It was nuts. But then I like had breakthroughs, like I said, and I was like, you know, like I'm a badass bitch, and like I've been through so many hard things, and like I know that I can get through anything basically, which is what the EMDR kind of like helped me with, which therapy just helps with in general. But I think the EMDR really just helps those like feelings in your body of anxiety and things like that. So it helps your body register. So yeah, that's basically what to expect. And like I said, every single EMDR session is different. Every therapist is different, but the therapist, like bottom line is you go in, you have two things that are vibrating. Your eyes literally go like this. Your brain just jumps to shit. Like it's honestly like mind blowing, because I'm like, I wasn't even thinking, like I thought of one thing and it went all over the place, like crazy. And it just kept doing that every single time. And then she's like, okay, think of this now. And just jump to different things, like, okay, we'll focus on that. Like that was the main focus of where your mind went. So we'll see where it goes from there. And it's like all these things kind of like bunched together that add up to this big thing, right? So that's basically what the EMDR helps you with. And like I said, she or he, the therapist, helps you like come to those conclusions and helps you heal from whatever trauma that you may have like some sort of PTSD from, or just like trauma and like really difficult with healing. So that's really all there is to EMDR, or at least with my experience. And like I said, sometimes it lasts a lot longer. Mine just didn't last how long. It was maybe like 6 sessions or whatever it is. Some people go for years. And it's just basically I would just say, it's going to be mentally and emotionally exhausting. So kind of like clear your schedule for the day and could just go home and relax. But it's completely worth it. It's really, really worth all of the pain that you have to kind of like relive, because I think that's how you get over things. A lot of times we want to just push them to the side or stuff them down, but then it comes up later in life. So I always say in order to heal, you have to really be in it and go through it again. And you have to really like let yourself sit with those emotions, but also just find different ways of coping and healing. So that is my experience with EMDR. Highly recommend it if you have a therapist that recommends it. If you're kind of like on the fence, I am so happy with it. We might actually do some more and go deeper into like childhood issues, which I think would be, beneficial. One of the best things I ever did, for sure. I don't really know how I would be today without it. I think that that's one of the main things that I think really helped me heal. And yeah, and obviously healing is a journey. Like, you still get triggered, you still have pain, you still struggle, and that's fine, but it's a consistent effort every day to work on yourself. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope I answered some of your questions, and I hope that made a lot of sense. And if it didn't, leave some comments below, let me know, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.